Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Swasth Wellbeing, would like to welcome you all for our today's session on influence of screens on children with Ms. Kiran Tevtiya. Ms. Kiran Tevtiya is a child behavioral psychologist practicing at multiple pediatric clinics in Mumbai. She supports parents in addressing emotional and behavioral challenges of children. Ms. Kiran would have done her post-graduation in counseling psychology along with studies in science of parenting, child rearing, and introduction to development psychology. Her professional experience includes having worked with many children in daycare, preschool, schools, and clinical setups. She helps dealing with some of the most common challenges faced by children, including poor attention and concentration, academic concerns, gadgets or screen time tussles, speaking offensively or harshly, breaking things, having catastrophic temper tantrums, stealing, arguing, and confronting others, lying, hitting peers, parents or teachers, parent-child distancing, bullying, fussy eating, and so on. So firstly, heartiest welcome, Ms. Kiran Tevtiya, on behalf of our entire team of Swasth Wellbeing. And we feel fortunate to have you talk on our platform today. And thus, without any further delays, would love to hear briefly about our today's session from you.
Thank you, Amartya. Thank you so much for your introduction. And it's such a pleasure to be in the events organized by Swasth Wellbeing and such a relevant topics that you and your team picks up each time. So it's great. In fact, when Amartya, just for the benefit of other listeners who are listening, when we were in talks at what should be the topic that we should bring up in this vector, screens is one thing which was one of the things which was at the top of my mind because what I have observed in the last, especially during the lockdown, right, a year or 2 years or so, it has affected and impacted across all the age groups of children. Previously, where we would think that probably it will affect the adolescents or a little older populace, during the lockdown, it has shown impact for as young as 1.5 year old child as well. So I think it's a very relevant topic that we have picked up for this session. Yeah.
So without any further delay, so we have received certain questions from the parents of the children. So I'll quickly run you through the questions and we can go further. So my first question would be, how do screens affect child development?
Now here, Amartya, we have to first define a couple of things in this question, right? We are talking about screens, we are talking about child, and we are talking about affect. Right? There are three things. Now, when I see a child, then it can be as young as the the toddler, then the preschooler, then schooler, and then the older age children, right? And as we see this big age band, then the question comes that, okay, what do we mean by screen, right? So how I view screens as that an activity for younger lot, which is probably, if used in replacement or as a shortcut to achieve the learning which the child should have otherwise done, it, right? What that means for a younger lot is that the learning to eat, right? Learning to handle frustration, right? Learning to wait. If you go somewhere out or you're seated in the car, learning to wait, the waiting threshold. If in all these areas, for the younger one first I'm talking, if screens are being used to shorten the learning curve or as a shortcut, it is going to affect their milestones. It is going to affect their language development, because language development is something which 0 to 7 years a child learns, and the only way that the child learns is through interactive, right, social interaction with people and peers around. So when screens start taking that, that space which should have been given to the learning of the child, are going to see the effect in the milestones of the young children. Now, if we come towards the other end of the spectrum, the older children, then the screen, because of the pull, inherent pull that screens have, right? Now, it's not about milestones per se, but it is about physiological, emotional, and social needs of the child. Right. So I have come across many cases in older children where the screens for entertainment, whether it is YouTube, whether it is video games, it starts affecting their motivation to eat, their sense of, I need to go to sleep, I'm feeling sleepy. Now, here I'm talking about very basic things, sleep and eat, which as a living being, we would think that probably it's such an automatic thing. It's a need of the body. So if we even start from that as the base, that as the foundation, then you can imagine everything about it, whether it is social connect, right? And even in the areas, Amrita, where the lockdown was getting eased out, I got so many children in this 10-year plus age where the motivation to go out and connect with friends had got affected so much that they would rather prefer sitting at home and doing screens. So you can imagine all the other things. If it is affecting the eat and sleep, then it has a potential to affect all the other needs of the child. So you can see the spectrum here, right? So I hope that,
Yes, that
answers
will
the question.
definitely help the parents to understand what exactly needs to be taken care. So my second question would be, how does screen time affect children's health?
Right. Um, Now, health, we are talking from physical health point of view. See, if now I'll take it as a generic question, but overall it encourages sedentary kind of lifestyle. We all are aware that the longer the child sits, and the younger children need to flex their gross motor skills, they need to do fine motor, they need to do those development out there, they need to the middle aged children, the middle childhood, which is around 7 years to 10, needs to learn how to make friends, how to handle social conflicts, right? So it is going to affect your cognitive health and problem solving skills as well. So overall sedentary lifestyle is going to affect the child's biological health as well as the cognitive health. When the child is not getting enough real life problem solving, it takes, essentially it takes the child into a world which is which the skills which the child thinks the child is learning, right, the child cannot apply it in the real life. A few days back, I was talking to this 12-year-old child where I said, okay, so when you're playing so many video games, right, then how do you see that? So the child says, I see I'm getting more adaptable, I'm getting more flexible, and I can solve so many problems because it needs a lot of intelligence to solve the problems. I said, all right, so can you go to the kitchen and fix a meal for yourself? And the child just abhors going outdoors trying to make friends because the child has started labeling on the self that I'm not good at making friends. I can't make friends. So you can imagine that all the things that we think we are intelligently solving and learning is affecting the child, right? So when you talk about physical health, Amrita, here, it's going to affect the child's overall health, as well as it pushes the sleep time in older children, even in younger one also. But in older children specifically, where they start thinking that I'm not feeling sleepy, let me probably catch up with some more, maybe social media or maybe YouTube or maybe something else till the time I feel sleepy. Now you can imagine what's happening when the body stops listening to the knock knock that you got to sleep. And this, of course, the screen and the light is not helping you to get an indication that's a sleep time. So the child starts thinking, I actually don't sleep. I actually am not feeling sleepy. And the child is sleeping at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the night. So you can imagine the whole circadian, the whole biorhythm is going to go for a toss. And next day, when the child gets up, in fact, because the child had a poor quality sleep, nighttime sleep. So we see how cascading the effects are, right? The overall emotional control of the child, the overall snappiness of the child, right, is going to increase. The motivation, the taste of food is going to get affected. So again, it'll be like a cycle. The child will think that I'm not feeling hungry. And by the time the child starts thinking, I'm feeling hungry, that is 12 o'clock in the night, the child is bound to go to the kitchen and bound to go to the closest junk food which is there for the child. So you notice that the whole biorhythm goes for a toss. So that's the amount of effect it can have on the health, Amrita, here.
So my third question would be, how does screen time affect a child's brain?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. The whole screen, right? We have to understand who creates these apps and softwares, right? What is the motivation of that person or that organization? Right? For that end of the people who are creating these tools, it's business. Their aim is, how can I increase the stickiness here? Okay. How do I understand the psychology of human behavior, right? And how do I design my system, the whole reward system, where the person keeps coming back and not just keeps coming back, wants to keep seeing what next, what next, what next. In fact, unlike a TV program, I mean, in today's time, even the TV program is 24/7. If you think Netflix as the TV program, smart TV. But then if you look for typical TV program, right, it has a starting and it'll end. The child will have a feeling that, all right, I finished, and will be ready to move on to the other activity. Here, when the child is on YouTube, just when the child was about to finish the video, you imagine what happened when 3 more videos start coming up that, hey, why don't you even say this? So the whole reward system keeps getting triggered in the brain, because brain is plastic, right? Brain works on what route is being used. It's like a practice. So in fact, in younger children, such is the plasticity of brain, that in younger children, first 5 years of life, Amrita, the children who had started speaking and started connecting with others, when they started getting 6 to 7 hours of screens, they stopped talking. They regressed. They stopped connecting with people. And whatever is the external manifestation, somewhere the brain, which is plastic, is undergoing a change in the circuitry, where the skills, right, where the practices that the person, because brain wants to be efficient, right? So whatever skills and whatever practices that the person is not using anymore starts getting pruned. Especially it happens in children because their brain is much more dynamic, right? Nerve connections are synapses are getting connected much faster and getting pruned much faster. So the child can in fact uh, here it is not directly related to screen, but it is related to the plasticity of the brain. A 6-year-old child, when was taken from an environment of X language and was put up in another environment of Y language, within 3 to 4 months of time, the child completely forgot the native language and picked up the new language. So whatever we are seeing as an external manifestation of the behavior is actually a change in the brain. So if only the reward system, the quick reward system is the path which is getting more and more sharper, you can imagine what's happening then. Then we are not really preparing the children for the real world. Because in the real world, the amount of effort which is required, even to make a 7-tier tower, even to make 7 blocks to put it one above another, how much frustration the child has to go through. So when the child's brain circuitry is getting changed for instant gratification, you can imagine how frustrated the child is going to feel in real life. And when, as a parent, we start noticing that the child is feeling so frustrated, what do we start thinking? Oh my God, looks like the child is not liking that because there are no screens. Let's again give back the screens to the child because the child will be quiet. So it's like, how do we come out of this cycle? So there's a real brain changes, circuitry changes, which is bound to happen. The reason why Amrita has taken a moment to explain it with examples is so that parents don't just see it as a mumbo jumbo, something technical that we're talking about. It's real. It affects the behavior, right? So I really hope, you know,
Yes, that will
yeah.
definitely help the parents to understand what needs to be taken care again. So, my fourth question will be: can too much screen time affect child's health and vision?
Okay. Now here, vision is a little tricky question because the studies. I mean, I'm not an ophthalmologist, but I will take it more of as a person who comes across many such news and all. So the studies which I see in vision, Amrita, they are more like those studies on alcohol. One study says there is no effect, another study says there is a effect. so and there was another study which so nicely a child of I think 9 or 10-year-old showed it to me, saying that look, they say they're good for my brain, I should be doing more, playing more on the video games, they will sharpen my brain. So I said, wow, that's wonderful. So but then yes, there is general, because I've been part of webinars where ophthalmologists were there as well. So generally, there is a 2020 kind of rule which says that if you have been watching something, now we have to understand that when how generally we visualize when we talk about screens is we don't really see screens as a TV, a big screen on the wall, and the child is here and the child is watching and the child is still aware of the surrounding. What we visualize generally with screen is like this, right? The screen is much closer, right? The child is centered more inside the device than anything else outside, right? That means the child is going to react much more if you ask the child to stop it. So it can bound to, because at the end of the day, even if you think from body point of view, even eyes are the muscles are being supported by the muscles. So of course a fatigue is bound to come. In fact, children see, again, we have to see it from a person, not from the thinking, from the thought that we all have to be doctors to understand it. It's common sense, because our eyes need to blink as well. Every time they blink, right, the liquid inside gets circulated. So you can imagine, when children are in the devices and they just forget to blink as well, is going to dry up your eyes, and more injuries and internal injuries are bound to happen. So apart from the muscles which are holding the eyeball, right, the dryness of the eyes, itchiness of the eyes, all these things are bound to happen. And then of course the other thing is the fatigue, overall fatigue. When you're overusing one particular muscles, like there was one experiment which I gave to a child, where I asked the child to hold a weight in his hand, right, for some time, and then the arm starts paining when you hold it for some time. So you can imagine why the arms start paining is muscles, right? They start complaining. But because you listen to the messages your body is saying, you keep it down. But now imagine when that screen, the way it has been designed, and great brains are behind it, Amritya, who design all those things, because they say, why to stop it? You remember when in Google there was a time when pagination was there. And pagination is what? First 20 things will be shown, page number 1, and then page number 2, page number 3, like that. Now they start thinking, why to do this pagination? Let's have it seamless. It's going. It's like every time you have to stop the screen, you have to tear yourself away that, okay, it's enough. So there's so much of onslaught of data here, right? So you can imagine when the child is completely in the device, right? And even if the eye is complaining, muscles are complaining, the way when I asked that particular child to hold the thing, the child acted and left the weight because the child was glued to his body. But here, even if the child is glued to the body, the child stops listening to the messages which are sent because the screen has grabbed the complete focus of the child. So if we even see from a common sense point of view, it is bound to affect the vision as well. It is bound to children who have some particular number, it is bound to increase, even if you see from common sense point of view. But then if you go by studies, they're all varied. I would say that because there are times we can't just see screen only from negative point of view. So there are some good things also children are doing. When I say screens, I talk about this unending urge to keep seeing, whether it is social media, YouTube, where it becomes so difficult for the child to tear off that it starts affecting physiological needs of the body, social need, cognitive needs, right? It's the child is not getting any newer set of problems than it is. But because screens are helpful as well, so as a practice, as a parent, if you can guide the children to follow this, 20 kind of thing, that every 20 minutes, half an hour, just take a break, stretch yourself, go around, look far away. These are the good hacks which can help the child. And of course, if there can be movements, right? Of course, we have not started talking about how to handle screens. Probably we can keep it towards the later part. Right now, we are just participating in doomsday. What's going to happen now that screens are here? They're not all bad because the topic is here. We started from there. But then, of course, it is bound to affect the health and vision as well, if we see from common sense point of view. So that sensitization in the parent's mind and in the and health, because it's the body, the mind will stop listening to the physiological need. If the child is eating, sometimes young children, Amrita, I get who are being fed by the parents because it's easier, right? If the child is eating, then the signal which comes from the stomach to the brain that, all right, I have eaten enough, the child is bound to ignore that signal. So the chances are very high that the child may actually overeat. Then we think from the other point of view, we say that the child does not eat enough without screen, so I have to give the screen. The reason why the child is eating with the screens, overeating, right? It could be that the child is overeating at the time and was not listening to the body. Right? So it is bound to affect the health, both from the point of view of overeating, where the child is not listening, underslept, quality sleep. Sometimes we think that, okay, the child has slept at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock and is getting up at 12 or 1, so maybe it is okay. But in quality sleep, the way we human beings are, the quality sleep is the night sleep. If regularly 2 to 3 days the child is deprived of that, it is bound to show in his or her social ability to connect with other people, ability to do attention and focus, bring focus on the things In fact, if you notice, unlike, again, going back to TV, where the child is watching a particular serial, the child will wait for it to finish, or if the child does not find interesting, we'll just leave it and start doing some other activity offline, right? The tricky part about screens, especially the screens that we now associate with, is the smart TV kind of screen where it is on demand. So the tricky part about that is, if a lot of time you will start noticing that the child is not even waiting for the whole video to finish, is just tuck, tuck, just kind of swiping left, right, up, down, right? The kind of instant, right? The instantness which the child's brain starts expecting can adversely affect the ability, the capability of the child to handle the real world problems. So it is bound to affect all the physical areas that you talked about, Amartya.
It was lovely hearing you on this part, because many people would have not known what are the effects happening because of these screens. Likely you said, for the screens are too long, that will affect the child's brain as well, the overall health as well. So
Yeah,
moving on
see,
to my.
yeah, I'm sorry, but there was a point which came in my mind that
Mhm.
I do have a thought here when we say that many people will not know. With the amount of information, we are in information age, right? Whether we read newspapers, we get so many forwards, we see it in the news everywhere, we all know it. But the problem is there is also a sense of disbelief, because if I am going in a hotel, okay, and I have a 3-year-old child or 2-year-old child, and I see another table, on another table a family is sitting where they have given a mobile to their child, and the child is nicely eating, the parent is helping eating, then I start looking at my child who is just jumping up and down the chair. I say, to hell with what I know, I am being watched, and I need my child, I have well intentions for my child, I need my child to be quiet, so I give a mobile to the child. So it isn't that we don't know, a lot of us know it, but when it comes to practicality, right, we also have to understand that there are skills that the child needs to learn, and that's going to be a painful process. It's not that the child is going to say thank you. My friends have an iPhone, a 11-year-old child will come and thank you. It's not going to happen where the child will say that thank you, you are not allowing me to have my personal mobile, even though every second person in my class is having a mobile. Child is rather going to shout at you and saying you are the worst parent on this earth. And that's going to hurt.
Yeah,
So
that's
please
true.
carry on.
That
Yeah.
is, yeah. So moving on to my next question. So does screen time affect child's behavior?
Right. Um, See, we should not paint a very sorry figure of the screen time. It's a generalized question. Screens, see, in today's age, it's an enabler as well. We have to see it from both the point of view, especially during the lockdown when the children could not socially connect, meet, right, with other people. So beautifully, it helped the children to have video calls with their friends, to call them up, to make their own groups, share photographs here and there, and even to play games together, right? And when the child has to, like, I see a lot of schools where they are online schooling, so sometimes when they show some videos, and then it increases the stickiness. Children suddenly see some audio visual and they find it interesting, and they're able to sit through the lesson, and sometimes the concepts also become clearer, because the whole chalkboard and the table, the teacher is not there, so sometimes it can become very monotonous if only the teacher is talking. So when all these things come, it can really be helpful. So see, I see it as a need to balance. Yeah. So if and also if the parent is sensitive and seeing that, is it replacing something or is it complementing? Yeah. So when I say replacing, what that means is that if the child is in an emotional state, how do I define that? If the child is in an emotional state which was worse, the child is tired, sad, angry, hungry, right, bored, all these things which are uncomfortable. If the child is in that state, and that time if we say, all right, you are angry, sad, bored, so you use a mobile. So the tricky thing that these expectations definitely can affect the behavior of the child. Why I say that is because the child starts associating the mobile as one of the survival kits. Right. So next time when the child is feeling sad because the child did not, and the amazing, beautiful question, Amrita, that you asked, that does it change the brain structure? Of course, it's bound to change the brain structure because it will set an expectation somewhere deep inside that, okay, I'm feeling sad. I need to be on the phone. I need to, play the game, right? So the child starts associating that. That means the child did not build capabilities to handle those uncomfortable emotions. So you can imagine it becomes like a craving then. However, if the state of the child before the mobile was given is happy, right, excited, the child went down, played with friends or something, came back, right, and then, or after the online schooling, interacted with the parents, did some cooking, did some things, and then, all right, is in high state. And then at that time the child sits and is probably doing screens for whatever x amount of time, which is age appropriate. It is fair enough, right? The child was in a high state to begin with. Child went through the screens, either entertainment, social connect, whatever is the aim, or to find more information online, n number of things. So then it is all right. It's balanced. Yeah. So we have to see it from this point of view. We can't put a motherly statement saying that, or fatherly statement, I mean, without taking any sides here. So a parent statement that, okay, screens affect behavior. It depends on how it is being used. Yeah. So if it is balanced, if that sensitivity is created, then actually we are helping the child to build a lifetime of balance for the devices. Yeah, because how to use the device in a balanced manner, if the child practices it at home, you are helping the child not to get into an addiction even for the lifetime. It's like healthy eating habits, right? So the way we inculcate in children healthy eating habits, the way we inculcate, similarly, the way we inculcate, okay, healthy physical activities, we also inculcate what are the healthy way of handling the devices, what are the healthy ways of screens. In fact, there was one thing which, because we have been so focused on health so far, that one thing that is another effect which I see is that for younger children first 10 years of age, is that the screens become an alternative source of information for the child. And a lot of time children start forming opinions, or start adopting mannerisms, or start mimicking, right, what they see it in the YouTube. Sometimes as a parent, when we see, all right, it's a YouTube video going on, there are some children there, it must be appropriate for children, I see children acting there, right? So we are okay with that, and we have ensured it's YouTube kids, whatever it is, right? But then we do not see the quality of the video, the emotions which are being shown there, the narration which are being shown there, the actions which they are doing. So it becomes an alternative source of information for young children, because they start mimicking that behavior at home with the family and with the peers. Right? So that's how we should see that even that aspect of behavior also starts showing in first 10 years of life, because that's a highly that's an age where children don't filter out information, whether they are reading books, whether they are interacting with friends, whether they are interacting with parents, teachers, everything is a source of learning for them. Then internet, the screens also become a source of information for them. So you have to imagine that 20, 25 years back, when it was like half an hour, 1 hour of TV, which was highly censored, now you can imagine what quality of information is there in their hands. And that quality of information is what the child is growing up in terms of building sense of humor, in terms of building outlook towards life. So we got to be, careful about this aspect of behavior as well. Yeah.
Okay, that was well informative, Ms. Kiran. So the next question I'll just move out is, what are the effects of screen? Uh, a brief, if you can give us an idea.
Okay. Um, So firstly, of course, now that whenever we talk about a movie kind of thing, so we had enough actions in the beginning where we talked about screens are this, that, right? So the effect of screens could be manifold. It can be, now we can have more balanced view here, that it can be an amazing source of information for children. It can be amazing source of self-learning for children, right? A particular age, uh, uh, in fact, when the parent and the child are co-watching those smaller videos for younger children, I'm saying, 5 years, 6 years, it can also become a family bonding kind of thing where they watch things together, and they are laughing at it, and all that also becomes like something interesting, right? A family bonding also happens, activity happens. So that's one of the effects of screens, where it becomes as a family, it becomes a source of entertainment. Now, if we talk about, because when you asked me this question, effect, Amrita, I didn't see it as a negative effect only. Yeah? So I'm talking about in a holistic way. And the other effects, right from, if I have to see from 1.5 years of age, can be that the child does not learn to truly relish the food, enjoy the food, right? Which the child should have learned by the time the child is 7 years old, 0 to 7, right? So that is the time when the child should have learned, build a motivation to do things. The child did not build a motivation because we use screens as a shortcut, right? The other one can be where the effect can be where the communication, speech is okay, where the child will be able to, when the child is watching screens, the child will develop a particular accent. If the child is on heavy dose of screen, will develop a particular accent, will develop a particular slangs which the child is subjected to. So that kind of speech is okay, but then truly verbal communication, that gets affected as well in children, right? The third aspect which gets affected is a social aspect. How tough it is. 5 years to 10 to 11 years is the time frame for a child to actually start connecting with more and more, connecting with peers away from the eyes of the adults. 5, 6 years onwards, parents are comfortable to leave the child, when they are not overtly watching the child. And that is the time when the child goes through, all sorts of social conflicts and problem solving. My friends don't want to play the game that I want to play. Yeah. Or four of the friends, three have grouped against me. They are not keeping me in the group. And all these practices which happens in the childhood are the ones which are going to help the child in the adulthood. Because very few professions are there which work in silos. How do we leave all the learning to corporate world itself? Right from team building also, they will teach you when you are 24, 25. Some things have to be learned when the child is in a malleable, in the younger age. And that can only happen through practice. That can only happen when the child is away from screens. So that social is another effect which happens. Another effect is this skewed expectation which comes that, okay, I don't like it. In fact, sometimes younger children get so used to the swiping that even in the air, they do it like this. They become so used to this action. So in fact, anything which is shiny, they see this thing. In fact, there was a child who picked up a book, a hardboard, book which I had given to a child, and the child is trying to do like this. I said, no, here you turn like this. There is no swiping happening here. So it can actually affect, these are the areas. The social area, instant gratification, setting up ability, their truly true abilities to handle frustration. That the groundedness goes missing, where the child is jumping from one thing to another. In fact, as the child grows up, a certain loneliness, a sense of loneliness can start coming up, because we are human beings. We are designed to connect with people. In fact, if parents have to see, how do you see your child when the child is towards the end of online schooling, right? When the child finally says, all right, my schooling is done for the day, you see the body language and the mannerism, the tone of the child, and you compare it with how the child's body language and tone is when the child is coming back from a physical school. If I have to just give example of my daughter, when my older daughter came back from the school, when the physical schools opened for about a month's time for older people. So that was the first time when she actually talked about what was taught in the school today. When the child went to physical school, because you can imagine, it's an immersive. We are now building all VR and MI and virtual reality is immersive. The physical world is the real immersive. So we want to simulate that in a virtual world, but we already have it. So the child needs to get it, right? So these are the all effect. You see the overall energy missing in the child, the low sense of loneliness. And unfortunately, by the time if the child has been on over screen, by the time the child is 12, 13, the labeling, the self-defeating thoughts that I'm not good at making friends. Just imagine how tough it is then to undo that effect. When the fact was the child did not try it enough, the child did not get enough platform to hone up those skills. So these are the whole effect, if I have to see from a balanced point of view, seeing both the positive and not so positive effects of the screens in a child's life.
That was insightful, Ms. Kiran. So moving on to my next question would be, what is the impact of screen time on children?
Now I have to think of a very creative reply to this question.
Yeah.
So, because it's here we are talking about the impact on children, and we have spent the last, I think, close to 50 minutes now in talking about the impact on children. So probably I'll take a moment while I answer this question, because I really want parents also to take a few, for the parents to feel empowered when they leave this session and not just leave with the problems alone. So probably I will take this moment to edit this question a bit and take it from this point of view, that now that we know the impact, right, to a little extent, is there something we can do about it, is the question. So are you okay if I take it from that point of view, Amartya?
Absolutely, absolutely, Ms. Kiran. Please go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. So see, important is not to see it as the screens as an adversary, right? And important for younger children first, 0 to 5, it's important for the parents not to feel or see the screens as something that the child is entitled to. The problem with this whole sense of entitlement is that somewhere the parents are thinking that if they are not showing it to the child, they are robbing the child from basic rights. That becomes a challenge, right? In fact, so much so that when the parent, sometimes I get a mother or a father, they start becoming guilty that I am checking WhatsApp, or I'm seeing some video and I'm not giving it to my child, so maybe I'm doing something wrong. So either they end up doing it when the child has gone to sleep, or feeling terribly guilty about it, or negotiating with the child. So I will always say that don't treat the mobile, especially for younger age, more as a luxury or privilege which you need to be owner of. You cannot put it on the child saying, first 10 years, you cannot put it on the child saying that, my child wants it, right? The way, whatever the child wants, you're not really necessarily giving it to the child, right? You're first thinking of the needs of the child, and then whatever you feel are reasonable wants, you give that, right? And if you start seeing it more as the way a father or mother drives the car, even if the child wants, you're not giving the car steering to the child's hand. So or whether when you cross the road, you're not leaving the child's hand when you're crossing a busy road. So you don't put these things on wants of the child. Similarly, I would say that do not see the screen from that point of view as well, right? It should be that, all right, maybe routine driven, where, okay, this is the time, or when family time, people are co-watching together, or for a particular stipulated time where the parent feels empowered that, all right, your time is up, it was for half an hour, please close the device, where the parent needs to truly believe that you have right to say, close it, and without feeling guilty, without feeling that you're robbing the child of something, because for this particular aspect, the child is going to tell you that is the mannerism will probably be for you to you'll probably gather from the mannerism that you're doing something really wrong to the child, because you have to understand the way apps and softwares are designed in the screens is to increase the stickiness. So you are not just playing with the brain of the child, you're playing with the manipulators who are creating these devices, who are adults, who are behaviorists, psychologists, gaming experts who understand behavior. So who are your competitors, you need to know. So it is not that it was a child's want, it has been created in such a manner. That is why all the efforts by educationists to gamify learning process, it hasn't worked. Because the moment, even surreptitiously, you start putting in some learning into the games, the child's mind says, no, 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 this is not what I'm sitting here for. Right? So they'll immediately reject it. So there is no learning which is put in out there, right? So if you can truly believe and not compete yourself with the child, not feel guilty, truly, whenever you're giving to the child, see the emotional state of the child. If it is uncomfortable emotional state, right, as I mentioned, right, sadness or anger or something, the child needs to process those feelings. Child needs to build capabilities to build defenses and coping mechanisms, right? So you cannot short circuit it or shorten that process by giving a device. Then the child will start attaching the device with their survival. Okay, so see the overall and always feel in control. And for older children, sometimes we start thinking that they are the older children, older when I say 13, 14 years. So it's all right, I have left it to the judicious decision of the child. I wouldn't say you should do that, especially if it is a matter of sleep, eat, and social that the child needs to get. So you should work collaboratively with the child, with older children, not authoritatively, but collaboratively with the child to keep the sensitization going. So that's my suggestion in terms of the keynotes that hopefully will help the parents. Thank you.
Yes, yes, Ms. Kiran, it was really insightful. So this we have come to a last question of the day. So which is, what are the screen time recommendations by age? If you can just elaborate or tell.
Right. Generally, it is said that below 2 years, you shouldn't. Even WHO recommends that. Uh, Even American Pediatrics Association recommends that. Below 2 years, right, it should be zero screen time, ideally. There's so many things that the child needs to master. There are so many milestones. Every month matters. So we can't rob away even half an hour or 1 hour from the child's learning. You should see how a 1.5 year or 2 year old child is continuously looking and solving problems. There are so many things that the child, sometimes either the child is strengthening the back muscle, sometimes leg muscle, sometimes hand pulling out falling down, again pulling out, looking at the toy, looking at the sunlight. There are so many things which the child is doing. So first 2 years, ideally, there shouldn't be any screen time. 2 to 5 years, use your judiciousness. As I said, that if any parent, as a parent, you should not believe that a child is entitled for screen time. Okay, you should not believe that. But yes, use your judiciousness. Generally 1 to 2 hours is what is recommended. Again, if it's a little younger child, don't keep it more than 20 minutes, a stretch. 20 minutes, it should be less. You should be regulating that. And beyond that, it should be more of how do you see that impacting other areas of the child, which the child should have been concentrating on. So generally 2 hours is what for 2 to 5 years, and 1 to 2 hours, and then after 5 years 2 hours or whatever it is. But again, don't take it like as this is the amount of vitamin A or iron that the parent has to give to the child. There is no vitamin S which the child needs for a healthy growing. So vitamin S is vitamin screens. The child doesn't need them. But then as a family, if you want to do it together, for knowledge you want to do it, for some socializing you want to do it, please go ahead. However, one thing that throughout the screens which we did not talk about was cyberbullying. We did not talk about how, those are another thing. Those are emotional aspects. We were more on physical, but please do be sensitive about it. Sensitize older children about it. Cyberbullying is a real thing. In the nighttime, in the bedroom, when the child is completely ranting out, is high on emotion, the child is device, there can be some really bad decisions that the child can take. So yeah, I hope this helps. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, with this, we had come towards the end of today's session. Thank you, Ms. Kiran, for such a wonderful and impactful session on the topic, influence of screens on children. So we would also like to thank our viewers and to attend the sessions, and also the followers who keeps us, the inspiration to give us to run the webinars and awareness sessions for them. So, and finally, with the hope of onboarding all of you again for our motivational sessions by the eminent experts, we please stay safe, stay healthy, and tune into Swasth Wellbeing. And thank you, Ms. Kiran, for sparing a lot of time today to help us understand the importance of influence of screens on children. With this, we will end our session this evening and look forward to host you again in the coming months and to it. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ms. Kiran. Look forward. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amartya. Thank you to all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.